do have a quorum, so we're going to move forward. It was stated that the meeting would start at 5:30, and we are at that hour. This is a workshop called and convened by councils this evening, February the 8th, 2022. Having called the meeting to order, we're going to recognize Robert Roode to give us an overview and update on traffic calming policies, and then Steve Grant is with us following that for our road preservation program. So with that, gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council, for joining us early this evening to attend this workshop and go over the traffic calming policy. I'll give a brief overview of what traffic calming is, history of our policy, and some proposed changes we're looking at implementing in that policy. Feel free to interrupt me with any questions, comments, suggestions, points of discussion you have. Just give me a shout. So what is traffic calming? It's defined as measures that reduce the negative effect of motor vehicle use with the goals of altering driver behavior, improving conditions for non-motorized street users. So how do we achieve that? And that's through physical design features intended to reduce vehicle speed and improve safety, namely speed humps, speed tables, raised intersections, horizontal shifts, roadway narrowing, or road diets. And we're all familiar with the North Main Street road diet we have pictured here on the right.
And a horizontal shift is kind of like what our downtown does now.
Correct, yes. So we do have some traffic calming features that we did with our streetscape project. So it's not just speed humps is the bottom line there. So implementation of traffic calming can reduce traffic speed, reduce motor vehicle collisions, improve safety for pedestrians and cyclists. Also generally increases pedestrian and bicycling activity because those users feel safer on the road, on the sidewalk, riding or walking. So quick history of our current traffic calming policy. We did not have any policy or program in place prior to 2013, but in May of 2013, this council adopted Resolution 7-2013. I looked back at the previous meeting minutes and engineering staff documents, and the stated goals of that policy were to reduce complexity and diminish time from initiation to completion of traffic calming construction, have a volume and speed criteria that was easily definable and defensible, and also have the goal of have a process that can be initiated by a small contingent in a neighborhood, but ultimately needs a large majority to approve of the project. So with the recent influx of applications staff seen the past year, 2 years, we feel the policy needs to be tweaked and clarified. So what are we proposing? In comparing to our current eligibility criteria defined there on the left, we currently require roads to be considered for speed bumps to have a functional classification as a residential street, posted speed of 35 miles per hour or less, be 2 lanes wide, have an 85th percentile speed of 5 miles per hour over the posted limit, and have a volume greater than 300 vehicles per day, average of weekdays, but not greater than 4,000 vehicles per day. So what are we proposing to change? Highlighted in blue text there on the left what we're looking to tweak and add. So wanting to change the posted speed requirement, reducing it to 30 miles per hour or less.
Mr. Roode.
Yes, sir.
Sorry to interrupt. Currently, what would, I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say Arlington Road or Arlington Avenue or Street. Is it 25 on that, or is it listed higher than that? Do you know?
I do not know off the top of my head. No, I don't. No, sir.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so the logic there of reducing the requirement, making it more stringent really, is the vast majority of our residential streets are 30 or 25 miles per hour. So 35 miles per hour is really going to be our collector type roadways in the city, which are not residential. So another proposed change is minimum length of road needs to be 1,000 feet or greater. road needs to be completely maintained by the city of Greer. We do have a lot of instances of roads that have lengths of city, county, intermittent. So makes it pretty much impossible to analyze, study, and coordinate those. So I want to make that a requirement here. Number 6 there, the road must not be a primary emergency services route per the International Fire Code. The fire department needs to be notified and approve of speed humps, so that's our bullet point there. Want to increase the volume requirement to 400 vehicles per day, and want to change the 85th percentile speed to that table format we got there, which has kind of a graded format combination, 85th percentile speed and volume requirement. So 400 vehicles per day or greater requires 9 miles per hour over the posted limit. 600 or greater is 8. 800 vehicles per day or greater is 7. So what is 85th percentile speed? Just to be clear, the 85th percentile speed is defined as the speed at or below which 85% of all vehicles are observed to travel under free-flowing conditions. Another way to consider this is the speed at which only 15% of traffic violate on average. In general, traffic engineers use the 85th percentile speed as a standard to set the speed limit at a safe speed, minimizing crashes and promoting uniform traffic flow along the corridor. So on the graph here, got a nice bell curve at 85% down the line, 85% to the left of the line, 15% to the right. That's the 85th percentile speed.
So in that regard, you mentioned the standard a minute ago. The slide you were on, you mentioned having a standard. Is what we are now using standardized in some way? I mean, we didn't just make this up ourselves, did we? I mean,
so then on to my next.
Is it legally defensible? Is what I'm asking you.
So in comparing to some of our neighboring jurisdictions, how do they do things? And reminder, our current policy is just a blanket 5 miles per hour over the speed limit for all roads greater than 300 vehicles per day. So if any street exceeds that 300 vehicle per day threshold, and if that 85th percentile speed is greater than 5 miles per hour over the posted limit, then we could effectively put speed humps on that street.
Thank you.
So how do we compare to some neighbors? City of Spartanburg, their minimum is 400 vehicles per day, but their speed threshold is 15 compared to what we're proposing in that 9. And then a similarly graded table. And then Greenville County is minimum 600 ADT and that minimum 15 as well for them. So how do our recent results of traffic studies and traffic calming studies compare to what we're proposing, what we currently have in place, and to City of Spartanburg and Greenville County? So past 2 years, we've received 14 applications, and under our current criteria, 6 streets meet those criteria. So how many of these applications would meet the neighboring jurisdictions and what we're proposing? 1 street would meet the City of Spartanburg's requirements, none would meet Greenville County's, and 2 streets would meet it under what we're proposing. Another big proposed change we're looking at adding is if the traffic study and traffic counts meet those new requirements, get the police department involved to conduct a period of enhanced traffic and speed enforcement. I've already talked to PD and Chief Hamby, and they've agreed that 1 to 2 weeks would be acceptable time frame for that. And then after that increased and enhanced traffic and speed enforcement, we'll conduct another traffic study, and if the counts of that second study do not qualify under the new criteria, then the application will be terminated. If the counts do meet the requirements a second time, then we'll continue on with the process. So what is the overall process? That's another thing we're looking at to define in the policy. It's kind of not really nailed down, so really want to get that nailed down and clear so people can read our policy and know how it plays out.
Mr. Rue,
Yes, sir.
I'm so sorry to interrupt.
No worries.
I just started thinking about that last slide. Is there any data that points to, I like the step of the enhanced, police presence there. Do we know any curve of things kind of creeping back in the wrong direction after that period of, I just wonder how, is this just a cycle, that repeats, or how does that look?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer to it, but there is, if upon the second study it fails, there is opportunity to reapply in a year or two. I think we've defined 2 years. So if it does creep back up, we can look at it again.
Okay.
As we're moving along, the biggest questions popping up in my mind is, does it work?
Do speed humps work, or does traffic calming work?
No,
Or does the
all of it?
enhanced
I guess
enforcement?
I guess the overall, if there's a overall theme here, it's to increase safety by reducing speeds. And when we first took up this years ago about traffic calming, I believe that it was said during the discussion that if you had a road and the start point was A and the finish point was B, that the speed between A and B, or the time between A and B, never changed. People would go faster to the speed hump, hit the brakes, go over it, speed up. So you didn't accomplish anything. So what kind of statistics or what kind of studies show that what you're proposing works?
So the previous, back in 2012, 2013, previous staff efforts, looking through their report, they had a study done, put some speed bumps down on some city streets, and they analyzed how the speed humps affected traffic, did timings between the humps, had some graphs showing without humps, with humps, and the conclusion was that travel time was affected. So speed humps did affect traffic speed and traffic flow.
From point A to point B?
Yes, sir.
So, but do we have anything else to hang our hat on besides a study that I'm sure would be considered scientific?
We can do some more studies and
Well, I mean, there's no need to
contact
make
some more consultants.
well, there's no need to make regulations if it don't work. I mean, that's why even think about doing it if you don't know that it's going to work.
Sure.
I think one of the things, I remember that conversation. I think one of the things that makes this a little different is I'm assuming we're talking about a speed table or whatever you call a platform type thing, as opposed to, I think we were looking at speed humps, which were
Like we got out there and
drive at one
yeah.
time. I don't know
Smaller
that, I don't think that those changed the A to B travel time that much, but I think if you literally got to drive up and over something.
I know it's just one instance and anecdotal. I can tell you, since the speed tables, I guess we're calling them, Little Creek, I didn't notice anything
I know was it us or the state that put them in on it runs off 14 up to the backside of Crestview School. American Legion.
That's county.
That's county. Did you?
Yes, sir.
If they come back and followed up after those have been in stock, or they've been in for a while
I
now.
have not had any discussions with the county on those, no, sir. Yeah, so humps versus bumps versus tables, we are looking at not a 6-inch, 2-foot, it's a 14-foot in travel length. So you really have to slow down, and it's not just a ramp over it. Not like the bumps over here in the City Hall parking lot.
One of the things I was thinking about is, you had a slide talking about Spartanburg County, City of Greer. Now, were these roads discounted or, taken out based off the vehicle traffic, or with the My concern is if we increase the total vehicle amount, a lot of times folks use it either as cut throughs or just as a quiet area. So typically, they're going to have a lower vehicle volume rate. So were those roads cut out because of, just because the vehicle
You
numbers?
mean where I had 6 currently meet and 2?
Yeah.
So I was only looking at the speed and the volume
Okay.
for those. So a couple of them did not meet the 400 ADT threshold, and the rest did not meet the speed threshold.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see if we could see how that correlates with how fire department looks at it, because I know every road shouldn't have speed bumps,
Right.
especially if you have fire trucks going down.
Yeah, so I honestly don't know fire's main thoroughfares or what they would say, no, we can't have speed humps here. Yeah, I'm not sure what roads those would be and how many of those we have. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because I wouldn't want to cut out possible good candidates, just
Sure.
based off of the,
Sure.
just that one thing.
Anything else? So step by step, step 1's of the application process. Step 1, submitting the initial application with 5 signatures of support from your neighbors. Step 2's city staff will review and approve the application and initiate the first field and traffic study. Step 3 is the only step we're proposing to change in these policy updates, and that's if the street meets the speed volume criteria, we'll do that PD enhanced enforcement, and then the second traffic study. Then if we move forward, city staff defines the impact area and provides the petition form for 65% of the neighbors to sign. And if the 65% petition is submitted and approved, the speed bump locations will be marked in the field. Then we require final permission from the adjacent property owners next to the proposed speed humps. Step 7's requesting funding approval from City Council. And Step 8, once funding is approved, the project will be added to Public Services work order list for construction. So overall, in general, the entire process is not instant, looking at 6 to 12 months to complete. Another thing we're looking to clarify in the proposed policy changes is clarifying property owner and impact area. So the current 2013 policy has references to property owner, resident, which could be someone renting a house, and then also household. So what's a household? How many votes per household? Do we want to look at property owner, or do we want to look at the people actually living in the house? So city staff's recommendation is the owner of the property listed on record should be the vote, and there should be 1 vote per household. Also want to clarify the impact area definition. It's kind of up for debate in our current policy, so really want to nail that down and state that impact area is defined as homes that are on the road where the bumps are proposed and homes on adjacent streets that must travel over the proposed bumps. So not looking to alter people's routes and change the way they commute. So all eligible requests require a case-by-case review to determine that impact area. So what are our goals? I went over our original goals from the 2013 policy. What are some new goals we're looking to add? We want to create a responsible policy that balances safety, budget, and staff time. I also want to focus on what I call the 3 E's: education, enforcement, and engineering. I feel like if we can get the education and enforcement component of things, engineering or physical features may not always be required. So don't want to make speed humps the first option in all scenarios. And that is all I got. If you have any questions, any other comments or suggestions, feel free to shout them out. We can go from there.
Now, on the single vote property owner question, how would that look for, like, if it's apartment complexes and things like that? Would we just consider each door at that point, or?
That is a good question. I've not had any scenarios.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Like, internal apartment streets are always going to be private. So if an apartment complex is on a main road, I don't know, we'd have to,
I was, the immediate example I thought of was Loyola Street. I mean, we have an apartment, sort of kind of apartment complex right there. If they want, I'm not saying they won't speed humps, but I'm just asking.
Well, under this new policy, if the speed limit on that collector's 30 or below, it theoretically would be eligible, but it's unlikely that you're going to put anything more than 60 or more units on a road that's not a collector. But it's something we certainly have to consider in this
Yeah, I
policy.
wouldn't want to back ourselves into
No,
it.
you're absolutely right.
yeah, that's a good question. I think just off the top of my head, majority of apartment sites would be not on a residential street. So the road classification comes in there. It's definitely something to consider.
But you do have, for townhomes, those are public roads, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, depending on the development, yes, sir.
Are there any other methods like, and I don't know, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I'm just thinking out loud, but especially if you have a T intersection, is there any way instead of humps, you do it with a three-way stop with an island that only allows one-way traffic?
Yeah, so that's where that traffic calming is not just speed humps, it's physical features such as that. So we also have design criteria I didn't go over. The proposed humps can only be within 100, 200 feet max to the intersection. So we do get a lot of complaints of people blowing through stop signs and things of that nature. Well, speed hump's not going to help someone stop at an intersection if you're blowing through an intersection. Speed hump's not going to help that.
Are we looking at other devices like rumble strips and raised pavement markers as well? Is that something that we considered?
We have not,
Okay.
but I think we take that on a case-by-case basis if that
Okay.
would make sense in whatever scenario. But in general, what we're getting is internal subdivision streets, which rumble strips. No one wants rumble strips in the middle of their internal
That's
street.
not
Yeah.
bad.
I guess, it just depends on the location. Yeah.
Would we be self-performing this work?
Yes. So, Public Services staff did the ones on Lemon Creek Drive. Material costs for us to do the work is about $1,000 per speed hump. If we were to have a contractor, if we were to contract out the work and have a contractor do it, rough estimates were at $4,000 per hump, just for a budget reference.
And all in about 2,500 apiece, cost-wise.
That's about 2,500, 3,000. That's, if we were to calculate out our staff labor and equipment rentals and all that, yes, sir. But just materials alone. Materials alone, go out there, do it. Took about 6 to 8 hours per hump. So about a day's work for our staff for each one.
And I assume that's part of the reason why we're suggesting the enhanced enforcement piece in there to see, is there another way to correct the problem before we go? And
That's correct, yeah. So it's our opinion, Steve and I's opinion, and we need not engineering, not speed hump solution. We need overall, PD needs to be involved with enforcement. We need an enforcement piece of it as well.
In this section, I understand we're addressing speed humps at this point in time. As we move along, will we address other traffic calming devices as we go along, traffic circles and different things, or have we already got that defined in our ordinance?
We do not have that defined anywhere. We certainly can. We just don't have any design documents of that sort nailed down.
I think that's important because one of the things, we want to slow the traffic down, but and I know we're talking about neighborhoods mainly, but you want to keep traffic moving. But before we do anything, I'd like some kind of statistics that says, yeah, this works. True scientific studies
Yes,
that
sir.
show that.
So just as an example, if, let's say, we had a developer come and said they wanted to do 500 houses, and they wanted to do traffic circles on the Spine Road all the way through, similar to what we've got at Blue Ridge Plantation. Is that just simply a staff decision at some point, or how would we handle that?
So that's where, yeah, the traffic impact analysis comes in as part of the plan review process and as part of the development process.
Well, is that something we could discuss with the new UDO? And I think I think it's a smart idea if it.
I mean, on the front end, it's the time to be doing it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so if we had a Blue Ridge Plantation and they were looking to put a straight road through there, obviously that would raise red flags of a drag strip. So we would raise questions about that during the plan review and development process.
I think the UDO certainly can reflect some traffic calming by design as part of the process, along with the TIAs. We can certainly establish those standards. And roundabouts, street trees, that kind of stuff has a natural way of slowing traffic down anyway.
I guess were you asking more for like just an arsenal that we have on existing roads of ways to tackle?
I think at some point in time, we're going to need
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at Verde. That was a straight shot all the way through there until they went back there and put in all those traffic circles, and they worked great. I mean, you got traffic coming from 2 or 3 directions on some of those things.
Yeah,
As much as I'm out that way, it seems like it works good to me.
It does to me too. I think that as we're working on this, and we show that these features will work, that any feature that we think of needs to go in so we can. You may not be here tomorrow, but the next guy can come and look at the whole list and say, "Well, that's a good idea. I didn't thought about that." So.
Yeah, that's where the case by case comes in. Verde Boulevard's a lot different than Cannon Street down here, so
Sure.
having that arsenal is definitely helpful, and obviously a big streetscape traffic calming project's a lot different than throwing up 3-4 speed humps on the street. So it's scale's a lot different. Funding, budget, policy, staff time, design's a lot different. So,
But to your point, I think, and to Jay's as well, we all understand that we deal with a whole lot more traffic than we generate internally. And we may need bigger solutions to traffic problems than what we would deal with were we, just the size of the city. So I think Mr. Bookie's point, we want to have a toolbox or an arsenal at some point in time as we continue to grow to address some of those needs.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you do, and this is kind of getting somewhat out of what we're talking about, but because we have been talking about neighborhoods and cut-throughs, and some roads, no matter what you do, they're going to be a cut-through. That's a given. And we want that traffic to continue to move. And I know these are state roads that I'm talking about now, but coming here for this meeting tonight, traffic was on South Main coming into town from Main and Poinsett all the way back to CSX tracks. It was backed up there. So it was quicker for me to turn down and come up Miller Street and go all the way around the block. So because traffic it stops. And I know it's got to stop at some point, but as long as we can kind of keep that in mind, traffic moving, I think that's a good way to think with it, I believe.
yes, sir. Yeah, we start talking Verde Boulevard or huge undertakings like that. That's where traffic studies come in and you have
No,
traffic
sure.
engineers looking at things.
No, I got
I'm
that.
definitely not, I'm not a speed hump salesman. There's people on both sides of the fence arguing for or against. I'm not one way or the other here. We're just looking to tweak our policy and kind of clarify some things and adjust things, having not revisited
If
it
you're gonna,
since.
but if you're gonna work on it, you need to add everything you can. Even look at the speed deal.
All right, anything else for Mr. Wood this evening? I'll give equal time to Mr. Grant if we can. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, Mr. Grant's gonna tell us how we can maintain them after we put speed humps on them.
The ones I've been on work. I mean, you just have to
All right, check it, got you.
go.
Okay, here we are. Good evening, council. Thank you for meeting here early, as Robert said earlier. Just want to familiarize you guys with the topic that I spent about a good portion of the last 18 months learning a lot about. I picked up a lot of information at the APWA conference last summer, and I also recently took an online course on pavement preservation that was very informative. And I've also been talking to our neighboring counties and cities about their programs and experiences, and I'll touch a little more on that later. So, according to the Federal Highway Administration, pavement preservation is a program that employs a network level, and in our case, our network is 130 miles of roads, a long-term strategy that enhances pavement performance by using an integrated, cost-effective set of practices that extends pavement life, improves safety, and meets motorist expectations. Some of the key concepts are it's proactive and not reactive. There's a heavy emphasis on preventive maintenance. Early intervention is essential, and the ultimate goal is to keep good roads in good condition. So if you'll remember that little phrase, keep good roads in good condition, it's going to come back up later. So what is the cost of delayed maintenance? In this Federal Highway Administration example, it's best to replace your timing belt on your car for $400 than to prematurely replace your entire engine later at a cost of $2,500. And similarly, if you guys have bought any new cars or own a car, I'm sure you change your oil regularly so that your engine doesn't lock up on you prematurely. So the point is, to make your car last, you need to spend maintenance funds along the way, and pavement preservation is the same concept. This is from the APWA. It's the asphalt life cycle. All asphalt deteriorates over time, and every pavement segment is somewhere on this life cycle curve. If you notice, conditions on the vertical and time is on the horizontal, and most pavements stay in pretty good shape early on, and then at some point around 10 or 15 years they reach a rapid decrease in condition, and then out to about 20 or 25 years. So I'm going to jump over to the Pavement Preservation and Recycling Alliance website for a quick little slideshow on how this curve can be used as a tool, if this works. So here's their website. Stay ahead of the curve. A well-implemented pavement preservation approach achieves maximum efficiency by increasing the average condition of your pavement while decreasing your average spend per square yard. So you can see the curve there, similar to the one we just looked at. So the typical life of an untreated road is 20 years, according to this curve. So over the first 75% of a road's life, it will drop 40% in quality. So that's around the 15-year mark on this particular curve. Over the next 12% of its life, it'll drop another 40% in quality. That's up to about year 18 on this particular curve. All roads pass a point of accelerated deterioration. Past that point, costly rehab and reconstruction are the only options. But by investing in preventative treatments, pavement owners can inexpensively add life to their pavement. In this example, they did a preventive treatment out around year 12, and the condition improved, and the curve starts back over, and then another little treatment out around year 17, and another treatment out around year 28. So but by performing these right treatments at the right time, pavement owners can get 40 years or more from the life of their roads. Plus, when good roads stay good, they spend more time above the complaint line, therefore reducing maintenance, decreasing user costs, and leading to happier taxpayers, residents, and businesses. An investment in preservation pays off. So every $2 you spend at the top part of the curve where the roads are in good condition, or every $4 to $8 you spend in the part of the curve where the roads are in still good to fair condition, saves $12 to $18 at the bottom of the curve when the roads are already in poor and very poor condition. So now that we know a little bit about understanding how this life cycle curve, let's look at a couple of examples on how it can help us. And I apologize, this is a little bit blurry in a couple of things, but I believe if you just follow the red and the black curves, I think you can get the point of this slide. This is from the APWA life cycle. It's a cost example of preservation versus rehabilitation. If you note the black lines, that's a major rehab every 15 years. So like a mill and overlay or reclaim. So the road's new up here and it goes down the curve in 15 years. You reclaim it or mill and overlay it, goes back to 100 in 15 years, and so on and so forth. And then the blue lines are you do a preventive maintenance every 5 to 8 years before the road gets past that point of rapid deterioration. So if you note the overall condition of the blue line stays above the complaint line, and also note the cost difference between these two. In this particular example, the rehab cost was about a little over $700,000 per mile over 50 years. The preservation approach using fog seals and other things like that was about $367,000, so approximately half. Now, this is an example, and of course our costs would vary, and every region is different, but you get the idea that periodic maintenance does help the asphalt last longer and keeps the overall condition better. And as the cost of asphalt and paving keeps rising, we need to look for effective strategies to preserve our asphalt. This is another slide from the APWA. It's a similar curve, but this time the PCI is the vertical axis over time. This little chart helps indicate the recommended preservation or rehab work based on the PCI. So if you'll notice in the upper segments in the green, they recommend rejuvenators and coatings. In the middle segments in yellow, where the PCI drops a little bit, surface treatments are recommended. And then the lower segments in the orange and red, when the PCI is below a 50, conventional approach is recommended, such as mill and overlays and reconstruct and rebuild. So that's where we've historically spent all of our paving funds at the bottom of the curve when the PCI is below 50. All the roads we pave every year is 20s, 30s, and 40s is the PCIs. So as we saw on the slideshow, the maintenance costs definitely increase as you move along the curve, and as you can also see on this example. So the maintenance costs at the bottom of the curve are 10 to 50 times more expensive per square yard than preservation on the top of the curve.
I got a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Fog seal rejuvenator, is that kind of like a crack filling, or I've never heard of that term?
Which one?
Fog seal rejuvenation? Or not?
Well, we're going
Okay,
to touch on some of that in just a second. But so the APWA states that regardless of how much annual funding is present, agencies can benefit greatly by allocating from 10 to 25% of their available funding for use with pavement preservation activities. This will allow them to improve overall pavement conditions and add more years of life to their road network. So one of the least expensive preservation products is called Reclamite. It is a rejuvenating agent. It's had widespread use since the 1970s. Spartanburg County has been using this product extensively, and Greenville County is planning to use this in the very near future. It penetrates into the asphalt about an inch or an inch and a half, and the benefits are it delays the aging process, restores the binder, which is the black part of the asphalt that bonds to all the aggregate, restores the flexibility and the bonding capabilities. It reduces permeability. It is very cost effective, about $1 per square yard right now. It adds 5 to 7 years of pavement to the pavement of life, and I do have a Reclamite project planned for later on this spring, summer, and I'll be coming to you at a later meeting to talk about that. Here's some pictures showing visual evidence of some roads that were treated with Reclamite. If you see the pictures, this one was after 8 years, the untreated section and a treated section. You notice the untreated section has some cracking that has started in this area, and it's good on the treated side. This other picture is 20 years, a treated section and an untreated, and you visibly can see that the untreated section has more cracking than it started versus the treated section. Another preservation product is known as HA5. It is a surface sealant, and it's been developed about 20 years ago. Numerous independent studies have been performed on its effectiveness. It does meet APWA standards. Spartanburg County has been using this product with good results, and if you see the picture right here, there's a side-by-side comparison 4 years after application between HA5 and a quote-unquote premium other polymer. The HA5 side looks much better and still is performing and preserving the pavement. So some of the benefits of HA5 are similar. It delays the aging process by extending pavement life, reduces the permeability. It does have a high public approval as the road turns black and stays black for many years. It adds 7 to 10 years to the pavement life, and I also have a project planned later on this summer for HA5, and I'll be coming to you later about that. So where do these products fall on the curve? Mr. Booker, this may answer your question. So Reclamite is a fog seal rejuvenator, which it says right there, fog seal rejuvenator, and HA5 is a fog seal coating, surface coating. So that's what that is. This is a dramatic example of how pavement preservation can extend the life of an asphalt. This picture was from a city in Connecticut. They didn't name the cities, but it was a border between two cities. This road was repaved as a joint project at the same time with the same mix by the same contractor. Originally milled and overlaid in 2004. And then you can see the picture that in 2010, the city that owned this side decided to crack seal and microsurface their half of the road. And the city that owned this side did no additional treatment. And then this picture was taken in 2018. You can see that the road that had some preventive maintenance in 2010 held up much better over time. So this road is 14 years old on this side. And 14 years on this side looks much worse. So is this a new concept, or are we lone wolves? Absolutely not. Preservation dates back about 50 years, actually, mostly in larger cities like the Dallases and the Phoenixes of the world. But preservation strategy, Spartanburg County has been using preservation strategies for about 10 years. The city of Greenville has been using them for about 5 years, and Greenville County is ready to get started. They're kind of like us. I've said many times before, we're not sleepy little Greer anymore. We have the same problems as bigger cities, and since our pavement is one of the most expensive assets that we maintain, we need to be strategic and cost effective in how we manage it. Historically, our toolbox has consisted only of mill and overlay and crack sealing and reclamation. Pavement preservation products and strategies like rejuvenators, surface coatings and fog seals and microsurfacing, thin overlays, and even recycling. These are more tools we need to add to our toolbox. So by utilizing all these strategies and products, we have more tools in our toolbox to stretch our maintenance dollars and keep our good roads good. And with that, I'll try to entertain any questions.
I'm just curious on how far are we in the process of how we do the roadway selection. You know, like you were talking about, 5 years, you want to start thinking about preservation. Are we just going forward, going to be looking at the newer roads?
Right now, you know, we have PCI data on all our roads. We got 6 years ago initially, and then 2 years ago it was updated. So we have great PCI data, so that's our start point. I can go into a little more at the future meeting when I've got these projects proposed. But yes, I'm looking at roads that we've repaved in the last 4 years to put the Reclamite on, and then some roads that are a little older, 10 or 12 years old, that are starting to show signs that need some help for the HA5. So yes, sir. But PCI is the key, and so our GIS data is invaluable for this.
We're doing that every 4 years?
Yes, sir.
So again, just for my clarity, we're talking about roughly doubling the life of our paved roads.
In theory, you can get 40 years, so another 15. Average road's 20, 25 years. And Mr. Booker could probably, 20, him and he's DOT, he knows 20, 25 years out of a road. So if we can get 40, we've kicked that can down 15 more years before we spend that major money on a rehab.
But we have low volume roads, so that preservation, you can make it last.
Right, and these products are mainly for subdivision roads. It would not be for like a major collector street, like a Main Street or something. It's mainly for low volume, low speed roads.
Jay, that's almost as good as just replacing everything with concrete,
Well, first of all, I want to go back to the beginning of a road as far as when it's constructed. I was talking to the administrator the other day about this, and I don't know if it's possible or not, but it would seem to me one of the things that decreases the life of the roads when you have to go cut it. And I would assume that, and I don't know, but I would say this 25-year lifespan is based on a road that's paved and there's no utility work underground done or anything like that. Is that the way that?
I don't know if that's ever been.
Don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would say that it's not. That's just my position. But anyway, if we receive plans for a new subdivision, is it possible to have the sewer lines, water lines, underground electrical, all of that stuff, instead of it being in the middle of the road, moved over to at least underneath the sidewalks? And when you have to have utilities that cross, looks like to me we could do it in an intersection, and that would be a concrete pathway. And the reason I use concrete is just it's a lot easier, and it does a lot easier to remove, and it's much, in my opinion, easier to repair, and it makes a better repair. So one, is that anything that's...
Well, then I do know that during subdivision review and the construction, that all the taps, the water and sewer taps are already run outside the right-of-way during the road construction process. I mean, that's all part of it. So when the taps are made to a house in a subdivision, they pick up the tap at the property line, not in the street. So the only time a new subdivision street would be cut if there was some kind of break in the line, the original main service line. So,
or if there's a vacant lot and they want to put in a house and then they've got a tap.
No, it should already have a tap. That's all part of the construction.
Okay, so all right, water lines. Where's the water lines?
They're already tapped.
No, I think he's asking, the main trunk line, is it running in the road?
No. What you're running into is you have to have a minimum distance between sanitary and your clean water. So that's why a lot of times they put it in the center of the road, because you have to have a certain.
No, I understand that, but if you got two sides of the road, and then you got gas lines, and because inevitably what happens is, not in the beginning, because that's not our taxpayer money. I'm concerned after the fact that we come in and we do preservation technique, or we have to go in and do whatever. Something happens underneath. If it's just because of the vibrations from the
If the
equipment.
main line breaks, then yes, there's
You got
usually a
to.
cut.
So is that something that we can? One, is it practical? And two, if it is, should we look at that while we're doing all this UDO?
Outside the road, you'd have to have some wide right of ways to put it all on the outside of the.
No.
Asphalt, yeah.
Okay, so you got a wide right of way to separate sewer and water.
But
Right?
if you had to fit gas and power and all that in the same
Yeah,
shoulder,
but
yes, sir. it gets
sewer
wider.
and water, gas, and electric can go in side by side.
Right. But what I'm saying is, if all of those are outside the pavement, then the right of ways are going to be probably wider than we currently require to fit all that in and get the separation you need.
So
I mean, it could
how
be
much
looked
wider?
at. We could require it. I mean, we could look at it, I suppose.
Yeah, I think we should look at that because, how wide are the sidewalks we require in downtown now? 8 feet, something like that. I mean,
It depends.
10.
It's 4 feet in subdivision.
Well, as a subdivision, but in downtown, they're much wider. I mean,
It varies.
Would you have to add another foot, or whatever. I just say that's something that needs to be looked at, because that's long term. I mean, and that's when our taxpayer money gets involved. The other thing, and I know some giggles about concrete, but over that 40-year, is it 40 years, the life of the road, as you do the preservation, $700 and something thousand spent. Now that's per mile, correct? Is that how that
That was
number?
per mile over 50 years, is the way that chart.
Right.
Per mile over 50 years.
So what is here's my simple thinking. If you do put in a concrete road, the lifespan of that, let's just say, let's give it a big range between 50 and 100 years. So do we know what that costs per mile?
I don't know, but I do know that concrete is a bit more expensive on the initial application.
Initial,
and that would be a policy change that we would have to require.
What I got to
I'd have to look.
I need information so I can try to formulate,
right,
my thinking. Because you got $750,000 per mile over 40 or 50 years. And that's not a realistic number based on what you just said. It was because 20 years maybe. And then
that was every 15 years. Like I said, that was an example. That's not necessary.
Right.
And that depends on the geographic region you're in.
Exactly.
Region.
So that's why, we need to compare. I guess that's what I'm saying. And especially when you can do it, maybe not all of it, but when it's new development and they've got a spine road going in, and we know that that's going to be the most traffic and so on and so forth, then that would be our development
see if I can
regulation.
find some information on the long-term maintenance cost of concrete comparison.
Others?
I got two other comments. Also, maybe be beneficial, because we run into this issue a lot. It's finding the contractors that can actually do the concrete pavement.
Yeah, I had that in my slides, but I left it out for time. But yeah, most of the contractors that do preservation are not in South Carolina. They're in other states. Contractors in South Carolina are set up for milling and overlaying and reclamation. So
I know with concrete pavement, they come in from Texas.
Yeah.
So.
Well, they're in North Carolina. North Carolina and other states. But anyway, that's.
But they work in South Carolina. They just don't reside in South Carolina.
Yeah.
So yeah. So
Now, just I guess bookkeeping wise, and we run into this problem a lot is, we'll pave a road and then kind of forget about it. Is there kind of like a bookkeeping tracking process of like, we paved this road in 2016 and in about 5 years it may be
GIS. That's what I'm working with our GIS coordinator
Okay.
as we speak on getting all this new data in our GIS, so that in 5 years and 10 years we can look back and say, oh yeah, we did reclamite in 2022 on this road, and et cetera, et cetera.
So you put that data and you compare it with the data we get every 4 years from.
Yeah.
Okay.
See.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Council, I will say this, for some of us that were around 15 years ago when we got the wake-up call about our roads and what they were going to look like in 10 or 15 years, we made some decisions to address this issue, and I think it was wise that we did that, and I think it's wise that we continue to look at options and maintain our roads that we do in the condition that we do, because I suspect if it was apparent what was city roads and what weren't city roads, there would be an obvious difference to the users of the roads anyway. And I think it's going to be in our best interest, regardless of what we do in this regard, is to figure out how we can continue to work with Greenville County and Spartanburg County to address those roads that have become issues inside of the municipality that may or may not be receiving any attention from the counties, and to figure out a way that we can overlap our program in some regard with theirs. Others? Oh, we got Mr. Grant?
Not ready for Mr. Grant, but because the road fee that was being charged, I guess, by all counties, has now been found illegal. Is there, are the counties looking, have they made any mention of how they may fund road, because like we were getting a portion of those dollars back. Spartanburg County got 100% back, right?
I haven't heard of anything.
No.
I haven't.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Council, thank you, sir. We appreciate the information. Council, we have concluded the workshop that was to be conducted prior to the meeting tonight. With that, we are right at 6:30, so we have a regularly scheduled meeting to call and convene, but since we have been here for a little while, let's take a bit of a recess, and we'll reconvene and start our regular meeting here, and let's say no more than 10 minutes. Let's try and be back in here within 5 to 7 minutes if we can, please. All right, folks. Thank you for joining us this evening. This is a called and convened Greer City Council meeting held this evening, February the 8th, 2022. Having called the meeting to order, I'd like to ask Council Member Mark Hopper, if he would, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and then an invocation for council. Please join us by standing.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for your care and your goodness, your provision for us. We thank you for the opportunity we have to be here tonight to serve our community. Lord, we thank you for your goodness to our community, the city of Greer. Lord, I pray for what's done and said here tonight. Lord, I pray it be done with humility and with wisdom in mind, and Lord, it be for your honor and your glory. We pray in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Ms. Duncan, anybody to appear in public forum this evening?
No, sir.
With that, then, council, you have minutes of the council meeting. We have two this evening, the workshop and then the regularly scheduled meeting. Entertain a motion to receive minutes from the workshop.
Second.
And a second. Any items of note for the clerk? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Aaronwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, the regularly scheduled council meeting, January the 25th, 2022. Entertain a motion that they be received.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any items of note for the clerk? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Aaronwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. The administrator's report follows the minutes. Mr. Merriman, the floor is yours, sir.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you. A couple real quick things. First of all, I want to thank you for your involvement and engagement with the workshop this evening. When you ran for office, no one ever said it was going to be fun all the time, but it was always going to be important. And I think that's important to remember that although our engineering staff is as talented as they come, they don't always bring the most riveting information. But it is very important, and I want to thank you for your patience in that. So as we move forward with that information through the budget and for future plans, you'll be hearing a lot of this again. Just a reminder, your ethics reports are due to the state by the 30th of March. Another reminder that the March 8th redistricting public hearing will take place. We are trying to pin down the time, whether it'll be a 5:30 public hearing or a 6:30 public hearing, depending on availability of staff from the State Office of Revenue and Fiscal Affairs. But again, March 8th, and that'll be the public hearing for that night for redistricting. Reminder, the next council meeting, we're going to have another workshop again at the end of the meeting. So when the regular meeting is adjourned, we will have 3 other presentations from your department heads in advance of our budget retreat, which takes place on the 25th of February, that Friday. So just a reminder that the evening of the 24th, the workshop will begin. We'll have the day-long workshop on the 25th and move full speed into the budget process. Unless there's any questions for me directly, that concludes my report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Interesting you should mention the engineer's report. They said theirs would be riveting compared to the fire department's. So. Let's move to appointments of boards and commissions. The Recreation Association has an opening for the Board of Trustees in District 1. You aware of that, sir?
Yes, sir. I have someone who has agreed to serve, but that was done just today, so I do not have his information. You probably know him as Lance Owens, but I'll be bringing forth that next meeting.
Great, thank you. Council, let's move to items of old business. We only have 2 this evening, the first of which is the second and final reading of ordinance number 52-2021. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by Author State Bank located at 705 South Welcome Road from C2 to RM2, multifamily residential. And I will entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second. Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Mr. McMahon joins us for these conversations if you have any questions. The second item would be the second and final reading of ordinance number 53-2021. This is an ordinance to change the zoning classification of property owned by MJT Properties LLC located at 3418 Brushy Creek Road from C2 to RM2. Any new or additional information, Mr. McMahon, in that regard?
No, sir.
All right. With that, then, I'll entertain a motion to receive. Do we have a motion to receive? I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none. Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Let's move to items of new business. Robert Rue comes back to the podium. We have a request from Meadow Lake Trails speed bumps. Meadow Lake Trail is seeking approval for speed bumps. The floor is yours, sir.
Yes, sir, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Back on the speed humps. So obviously we talked about our proposed policy changes earlier in the workshop. Meadow Lake Trails met the policy of our current criteria, and for reference, this application had 3 streets studied, which was Meadow Lake Trail here, Meadow Oak Court, and Meadow Springs Lane at the top there. And this is in the Brushy Meadow subdivision, located off Brushy Creek Road and Henderson Gap Road. So we're proposing four humps along Meadow Lake Trail. As previously discussed, approximate cost is $1,000 per bump installed by Public Services staff. For reference, we had $8,000 budgeted in 2021 budget year. And we also have a current backlog of 4 streets after this one that are likely going to need to wait till next budget year to be installed. So per City of Greer Traffic Calming Policy Resolution number 7-2013, Meadow Lake Trails met all criteria and requirements to be considered for speed bumps. Therefore, city engineering staff has identified these 4 speed bump locations along Meadow Lake Trail and requests funding approval for their installation. And any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. So, Mr. Merriman, we have $8,000. Is that correct, Mr. Rue?
Yes, sir. This past current budget year. So we recently installed the 4 on Lemon Creek, and these 4 are going to wipe out current budget.
So unless this council chooses to change that number in the upcoming budget, would we simply create a list, much like we do the roads, and then they would just be rotating?
That's correct. We do offer if the residents want to pay to install them themselves, there's the option for that as well.
Okay. All right. Others?
I've got about 4 places where I run into these cursed things, and I noticed the signage is different in just about every place. Do you have a plan for how you're going to sign these?
We do, and that's based on the manual uniform traffic control devices. That's the MUTCD, which pretty much governs all street signage. So we just have the speed hump sign with the warning 15 miles per hour below it is what we've been installing.
You're going to put one at each hump
Yes, sir.
in each direction?
Yes, sir.
Good, because I don't like the one that say 4 humps.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Definitely. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree on that for sure.
Others? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. First and final reading of Resolution 3-22. This is a resolution to accept Pelham Glen subdivision streets, namely Pelham Glen Way, Lexi Glen Court, into the City of Greer street system. Mr. Rue?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before you this evening's Pelham Glen subdivision. The project development started construction in January of 2018. It's located off Westmoreland Road across from Bank Creek Plantation. It's in Council District 3. All utilities are in, streets are paved. Construction's complete at 45 single-family residences built out. Staff has inspected the construction of the roads and believe they meet city standards. Therefore, staff recommends Pelham Glen Way with a length of 1,189 feet, Lexi Glen Court with a length of 172 feet be accepted into the city street system for ownership and maintenance.
Ordinance number 4-2022 comes with a recommendation from staff. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion.
Just a quick question. Your photograph,
Yes, sir.
where on the sidewalk side, the grassy area between the gutter and the sidewalk,
Yes.
is that right of way?
Yes, sir. So the sidewalk's in the right of way as well. Yes, sir.
Others? Discussion? Comments? Questions? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. First reading of ordinance number 4-2022. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by Pact Divine LLC located on Abner Creek Road by 100% petition and to establish a zoning classification of DRD for said property. Mr. McMahon joins us for this discussion. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Ordinance 4 is an annexation request for a parcel located on Abner Creek, as you stated, with a proposed design review district zoning for up to 136 townhomes. The density is roughly 6.33 units per acre. Just to kind of give you a perspective of that, that density would fall between an RM2 and an R5 zoning. Here's the current aerial view of the property. Here's the current zoning map. The property adjacent to it that is within the city limits is zoned RM2. Here's the future land use map. This property is adjacent to mixed employment. Here's the current street view. And here's the layout they are proposing. This project has gone to our Planning Advisory Committee for review, which is made up of internal departments and external departments and agencies. Traffic impact study was completed with recommendations of a left turn lane on Abner Creek into the site and proposed improvements at the intersection of Westmoreland and Abner Creek. DOT is still kind of going through the review. They just received it, but that's their preliminary suggestions. So within the statement of intent, we've kind of taken what council has kind of directed at other DRDs that we have done, and the material list will be a combination of hardy board, brick, stone, a minimum of 2 of those. No vinyl will be allowed in this project. The exterior setback off of Abner Creek will be 30 feet. That is allowed for future right-of-way acquisition if needed. And that is all that I really have for this one, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have, sir.
By show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to receive for the purpose of discussion.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion.
The roadway upgrades that you referred to, can you kind of give us a proximity of where Westmoreland and those are? If possible.
Westmoreland's going to be kind of
way
closer,
down. Okay.
closer to this area, closer to the hospital entrance.
Yeah, it's about a half mile down, and it's right about where the hospital ties into Abner Creek.
And you said DOT is recommending a possible left turn lane, so I guess.
There'll be a left turn lane going into this site
going
off of Abner, and then they're looking at potential improvements at Westmoreland intersection.
Okay. Because this is in the straightaway section, not around that curve.
Yes, sir. This is in the straightaway section before you get up to Brockman McClellan.
Questions? Comments? Anything you'd like to add to the discussion? Just if you'll identify yourself for the matter of record, please.
Yes, my name's Alex Zunt with Zunt Engineering. I'm the applicant on this. There's going to be a secondary fire access lane that comes off at Davis Drive that will be a full access, but primarily used for mostly emergency. The left turn lane is just on Abner Creek that I'll access this site. DOT has no clue what's going to go on at Westmoreland because there's, right now, the level of service is right about an F existing. So even with the traffic that we add, there's going to be lots of discussions between Spartanburg County and DOT right now, trying to figure out who's going to pay for that and any kind of improvements, because I believe there's a detention bond there, and so they don't know if they're going to put a traffic light or multiple turn lanes, or it's something that's above my pay grade, I think, at this point. So, and I believe there's plenty of infrastructure on the site. They have the sewer that runs right through the backside of it, and I can answer any other questions that you guys need.
Any questions for the engineer?
He's going to be sold, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, possibly. I can't confirm that yet.
Probably better answered by the developer.
Don't know if they have a final end user. Possibly one, maybe for rent, maybe for full sale. So it's still up in the air at this point.
I was just curious about price point, but
Price point, the couple that I've heard is about the mid to high 2s to low 3s. I mean, not bare bones type of, but again, prices right now, who knows where it's going to go.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Others? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Aaronwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Item 4, first reading of ordinance number 5-2022. This is an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a development agreement by and between the City of Greer, South Carolina, and Pac Divine LLC with respect to infrastructure improvements in the City of Greer and other matters related thereto. Mr. McMahon.
Yes, sir. As you stated, Ordinance 5-22 or 2022 is a development agreement between Divine Group and the City of Greer for the annexation of Ordinance 4. This is our standard agreement that we've used on previous projects. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have, sir.
For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Let's move to item 5, first reading of ordinance number 6-2022. An ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by Gabriel Watts and Alan Watts located at 295 Gabriel Road by 100% petition and to establish a zoning classification of I-1 for said property. Mr. McMahon.
Yes, sir. As you stated, this is for an annexation of a parcel on Genova Road. Here's an aerial view of the property. It's kind of adjacent to Plastic Omnium. Here is the current zoning map. Pretty much everything surrounding the area that is within the city limits is I-1. The property to the back is located within the city of Duncan. And here's the future land use map. It is for mixed employment. What the developer is proposing to do is to combine this property with the adjacent property for a future industrial project that's roughly 90,000 square foot project. Here is the street view. This will go to Planning Commission for public hearing on the 21st, and I'll be happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
So for the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Can you go back one slide, please?
Yes, sir.
So we're just looking at the front corner of the rest of that parcel?
It's just this parcel right here. The remainder of the project is going to take place on this parcel. This parcel right here is where they're going to move their detention pond to. There is a right-of-way issue. They are working through having that right-of-way dedicated to each property owner, which would be them on both sides.
So are we going to require that? I guess that's going to have to become separate, standalone parcel, correct?
So what they'll do is they'll combine, when they submit for their project, once it goes through civil review, before they can get a building permit, they'll have to have these properties combined.
Okay, and is the right-of-way issue where these parcels do not meet?
It's right here. It's a paper right-of-way. The county has it recorded as future opened right-of-way. It's never been opened, and they are working through the process right now of having it closed.
So who owns that property?
It's just considered right-of-way, and it's county right-of-way. It's listed as county right-of-way.
So how do we?
Can that be solved by quitclaim deed?
Yeah,
That
they would quit, the county would have to quit claim it.
Well, I got that, but we're doing a reading for annexation, and we're not contiguous.
The properties, you can take away right-of-way out of annexation, so this road right here, like let's say Genova Road, if this property were being requested to be annexed in, the roadway does not count as a property. So if you take the roadway out, the two properties do touch. So if you take out right-of-way, it touches.
But we do not know who the owner of the property is.
County.
The county owns the
owns the
right-of-way.
right-of-way. It's not an actual parcel. It is actual
It's
right-of-way
right-of-way.
that's listed.
By show of hands, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? From that aerial, what do we know what the rest of that lot consists of? Is that a spoil pile of some type, or do we know what that is?
Are we talking about this piece right here, Mayor?
Yeah.
So there are some trailers on there that are being removed right now. I believe their hope is basically start combining the remainder of the properties for industrial use.
Oh, okay. This is where the wrecker company or trucking company or something is.
I believe it's on this side of the road.
Oh, okay. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Floor is open for discussion. Other questions?
Staff is okay that this won't be contested, or it can't, that it's,
Staff is confident it will not be contested annexation. Yes, sir.
Others? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis, Mayor Danner.
Yes. Next item, council, first reading of ordinance number 7-2022. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of a portion of property owned by Curtin Investments LLC located at 191 Freeman Farm Road by 100% petition and to establish a zoning classification of I-1 for said property. Mr. Matt Mahan.
Yes, sir. As you stated, Ordinance 7 is a request for an annexation for a portion of a property on Freeman Farm Road with I-1. Here's an aerial view of the site. Just to the south, this is the Becknell Project Apollo site. Here's the current zoning map. And here's the future land use map. This is within mixed employment. And here's the current street view. I uploaded a copy of the survey to show this portion of the property will stay within the county, and this is the portion they are looking to annex in. This will go to Planning Commission on the 21st for a public hearing. I'll be happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
By show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Entertain a motion to receive for purpose of discussion.
So moved. Second.
Motion, second. Floor is open for discussion.
Can you pull the larger map back out? How does that impact us as far as, you're saying they're carving a piece of the parcel off to stay in the county? What's the purpose for that?
The owner of the property just didn't want to sell the entire parcel. So it's roughly, I believe, 7.28 acres is what they're going to annex in for a future industrial project.
And with your cursor, put it over where that parcel is this corner.
It's this parcel right here, sir.
No. That's the parcel we're annexing, but what's
Yes.
the parcel that's going to stay out?
It's a portion of this parcel. I'll go to this one. So this is kind of the parcel boundary line right here. Whereas before on the map, you would see it kind of went all the way through here. It's roughly kind of cutting it through this area.
Two different owners, right? That's what we're talking about.
It's one owner. They're only bringing in this portion of the property.
So they're cutting the front corner off and the back corner as well?
They don't actually, this property right here, this corner piece is not part of it. It's just this red outline here and shown on the survey here.
And why, and you say, why are they leaving this in the county?
They're retaining it. The property owner's retaining it and selling this to a developer for industrial project.
Would they still have access to sewer with that site there?
If they were to bring it in, they would have access to sewer.
Is it out in the road?
That I don't know. This project hasn't come to PAC yet. This is just for the annexation. So they haven't actually submitted plans to us of what the building's going to look like or the site plan.
Okay, lot 1 and lot 2 are going to be owned by two different owners.
Yes, they'll have two separate tax map numbers once they get subdivided.
No, they're going to be, lot 1 and lot 2 are owned by two separate owners.
Not right now. Right now,
No,
it's
but they
one
will.
owner.
But they will be on, lot 2 will be
Yes.
a separate owner, lot 1 will be a separate owner.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry, that may be, I might have confused that.
Others?
Zoning map wise, was it consistent? Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir. This property is all I-1, and that's what they're requesting right here.
Now, the portion they're retaining, what is that going to be?
It would just be
unzoned?
unzoned in Spartanburg County.
Others? Questions? Comments? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. First reading of ordinance number 8-2022. This is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by Alvin and Nadine Donahue located at 873 Old Jones Road by 100% petition and to establish a zoning classification of R10 for said property. Mr. McMahon.
Yes, sir. As you stated, Ordinance 8 and Ordinance 9 are related. They plan on combining these properties for a future residential project. Here's an aerial view of the sites. This portion right here is related to Ordinance 9. The larger portion is Ordinance 8. Here is the current zoning. Here's the future land use map. Along the Old Jones Road and this section, this is mixed employment. Adjacent to the east is traditional neighborhood. This project has not gone to PAC. They have not submitted for civil plans. Once that comes for preliminary plat approval, that will go to our planning advisory committee prior to it going to planning commission, so it will be reviewed by internal staff and outside agencies. And that is all the information that I have, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have, sir.
For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
By show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? Thank you. Would you go back one slide?
Yes, sir.
Where is the road frontage here?
Road frontage, this is Old Jones Road right here. This is Freeman Farm subdivision, and this is D. Young Road right here. And this is Freeman Farm. The project that was just before this was kind of over in this area.
And the piece of property across the street, directly across the street, is DRD. Okay.
Yes, sir. That was the industrial site that had kind of come in maybe 6-7 months ago.
Had the warehouse on it.
They're going to do a warehouse. We kind of asked for, some additional buffering, and they were
Okay.
willing to go for that route.
Okay.
What happens with, I think I remember this kind of being in discussion with that property that was across from the high school, but what happens when there's ponds on property that we bring inside the city? Is there anything unique or special that we do there?
That will come through civil review. They'll review that. I mean, typically they're just not allowed to have any real impact to that. The engineer is here if there are any additional questions on that, but I do not believe he has worked up the actual plans at this point. But review of the pond is just a part of the civil review process.
Others? Questions? Comments? Discussion? Ms. Duncan?
Mr. Airwood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Thank you. Item number 9-2022, this is an ordinance to provide for the annexation of property owned by Sandra Harrison, Teresa Alexandra, Angela Henderson, Cindy Gibson, Grant Harrison, Michelle Hickman, Melissa Goldsmith, Mary Alexandra, and Miranda Alexander, located at 865 Old Jones Road by 100% petition and to establish a zoning classification of R10. Mr. McMahon?
Yes, sir. On your map right in front of you right here, this is Ordinance 9. It is related to Ordinance number 8. This will be combined with this project for a single-family development. This is the proposed property line that they are adding. This portion of the property will not be included.
For the purpose of discussion, I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. By show of hand, is the owner of the property or representative of the owner of the property with us this evening? You get a star in your crown for getting this many people together. Others, questions, comments?
Mr. McMahon, what is the area between Freeman Farm up there and this parcel 9-2022? What is in that space? Yes, right.
These right here.
Yes.
These are all single-family homes. I believe this property right here is
It's like a tow truck.
a winery type function.
Just out of curiosity, have we ever had anybody challenge an annexation with this many people in ownership of a particular property? I don't remember that happening.
Not to my knowledge, and this will also be.
I don't either. I think that's why it was kind of, it's unusual to see that many names on a request for annexation. I'm glad that everybody was willing to go along with it.
So as part of our review, when we first get the documents in, we verify based on the deed, who's on the deed, and who has signed the petition to make sure we have all the signatures needed.
Others, questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan.
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, let's move to the last item of regular business this evening. This is the first reading of ordinance number 10-2022. This is an ordinance authorizing the execution and delivery of a development agreement by and between the City of Greer, South Carolina, and Indigo Blue Investments, LLC, with respect to infrastructure improvements in the City of Greer and other matters related thereto. I'll entertain a motion to receive.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Comments? Hearing none, Ms. Duncan.
Mr. Arrowood,
Yes.
Mr. Booker,
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Yes.
Mr. Dumas,
Yes.
Mr. Bettis,
Yes.
Mayor Danner.
Yes. Council, we have no items for executive session this evening. We stand adjourned from our regularly scheduled meeting. We will reconvene in about, let's say, 10, no more than 15 minutes for our second workshop. All right, we want to get started with our second workshop this evening. Appreciate the time that Fire Department and Municipal Court are going to share with us this evening, and appreciate them being here. I want to call the workshop to order, and with that, also the Police Department. And with that, I'm going to just go the way we're listed. Fire Department up first. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I don't know, like you said, it's going to be as riveting as the engineering department. So I was actually going for brevity, but I missed the memo that Mr. Merriman sent out talking about keeping it real short. I did cut it down to 63 slides, so we'll go and get started.
I gotta go.
So we're going to go over a quick review. It's a 5-year review with an emphasis on last year. During that 5 years, our call volume has increased about 43%. Rescue and EMS incidents have dropped by 12.5% overall during that period of time. Wow. As all of you know, we were successful in gaining our ISO Class 1. Some additional improvements during that period of time have included the mobile data terminals with AVL locators that help us navigate and also recommend closest units to the incidents that we go to. We improved the radio system, both us and the police department, as well as now our building development standards are also on the 800 megahertz system. We implemented automatic aid closest unit dispatch with our neighboring departments. We did purchase the ladder truck replacement and have that in service. We did get approved in the current budget a new fire engine replacement. That process started as soon as you approved the budget, and we started July 1. That truck is estimated to be delivered sometime in August of this year. Some additional improvements, we purchased the new round of turnout gear. As you know, we do that about every 5 years. Again, that's the budget process. We also purchased new self-contained breathing apparatus as our apparatus was aging out, and we did that through a FEMA grant, which basically had the city do a 10% match, so we saved quite a bit of money there. The QRV program, that's a major program for this year, as most of you are aware. So we started that out this year. We budgeted part-time paramedics and EMTs in an effort to staff that unit during our peak call times, which are roughly 7:45 a.m. to 7:45 p.m. November 2021, we did receive our ALS licensure through South Carolina DHEC, and we did a partial ramp up in December. And our first full month we just completed in January, so I want to share a little bit of information with you about success with that. First, we reduced the large apparatus responses to medical calls by 43% overall. Out of 187 total responses that included both fire department and EMS resources on, 166 of those, the fire department was on scene first, and out of those that were on scene first, our average time until EMS followed was 10 minutes and 20 seconds. 21 of those calls, EMS was on scene first, and in those situations, we followed by 1 minute and 18 seconds. The difference there is roughly 9 minutes for that. We had 11 total cardiac arrests during that time period. 10 of those we were on scene first at 5:41, and then 1 EMS was on scene roughly 2 minutes, so the difference is about 3:41. One note there, the longest delay we had from the time the fire department arrived on scene to the time EMS arrived on scene for cardiac arrest was over 18 minutes.
What county was that?
I believe it was Greenville County. I'm not going to tell you that because I don't have that data right in front of me, but I believe it's Greenville County. And to that point, you know, we've been having a lot of meetings with Greenville County EMS about, you know, delays and stuff like that. And I want to make sure you all are aware that we are having those ongoing conversations with them, but also to put in perspective, they average about 6,000 calls a month. The past couple months, they've been over 8,000 calls a month. So it's not just that they don't have resources. That's part of the problem, but part of the problem is also a significant increase in call volume as well. And so this next...
Hang on one second. Can you
I'm
go
sorry.
back to the slide?
Yes, sir.
Do you think that the issue is they just don't? I think they said they had a shortage of manpower and equipment, or what is it? What is the issue?
Honestly, it's a combination of several things. It's not just one thing that you can put your finger on. The industry as a whole is suffering just like everybody else, trying to recruit and fill positions and things like that. So it is partially not having enough personnel, manpower. They have, how many trucks do they have on order?
6.
They have 6, yeah, 6, no, on order.
Maybe on the road.
No, on order, like purchase.
6.
Okay. So they've got 6 additional units that they've got on order, but again, they're waiting for them to be delivered. We've also met with them last week to look at some additional avenues to try to alleviate some of that pressure as well. So,
Is it just because they're stretched all over the county? I mean, they're trying to cover so much geography, especially in rural areas, and just.
So yes and no. The way that works is, you know, a county-based system, it looks at the whole pie being the county, and then you've got pieces of the pie which can be, you know, your urban areas. So Greer, obviously city limits, where you have higher density. So where you have higher density, you're going to have higher call volume as well. So you'll have that, but then, you know, trying to look at that whole pie, and then you have all those resources being used or utilized more in those higher density areas, but then that puts you in a situation where you get to the hospital where they're having a backlog trying to get them processed in the ER. There's times that there'd be, you know, 10 trucks, 10 EMS units sitting there at the ER waiting to transfer patients into the ER, and then the hospital doesn't have enough resources to get those people processed, and that boils down to beds, nursing staff, things like that. So you have that delay. And then on top of that, when you have those incidents that are further out into the more rural areas, then that just exacerbates that problem. Does that answer the question?
Lee, I think the fire chief's being nice. Well, now, and I've got experience to back it up, but I'm sure everything that he said is correct. But many years ago, unless it was something major like an automobile accident, the fire department didn't go. There was an incident in Spartanburg County on our side. There was a fire department wasn't called. There was a big delay for EMS getting there, and a person died. So then that's when the county started calling on us. It wasn't that bad. And then things start going on and going on. And I blame it. I lay it at the feet of leaders putting their heads in the sand and trying to pass off, push the expenses down the road to someone else. Greenville County, I don't remember the year, they got completely out of the rescue business. They went to the fire chiefs and said, here's what we'll do. We'll give y'all our rescue equipment. Y'all handle the rescue. A lot of the fire chiefs, I'm not, they, for whatever reason, thought that was a good idea. And then it just started to snowball and snowball and snowball. And in my opinion, leaders, and this is nationwide, I don't think that nobody, they have relied on the fire service to pick up the slack, because over the years the number of fire calls have decreased, but now they're probably plateaued out at the bottom and are on an increase. So they were relying on fire department to pick it up. Fire department was okay at the time because they could justify more personnel, more equipment, blah, 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 and fill it in with these medical costs. But now, everything comes to a head eventually. So that's Jason's opinion.
So who actually runs the EMS system? I know it's a county EMS, but they had some relation with Prisma at some point in time, didn't they? Or do now?
They attempted to do that, but
Okay.
that was not when it was between Prisma and what's the other hospital? St. Francis. There you go. It was between those two. They both wanted to have a role in it, and when that went down that path, they decided to pull that back. And it's still on the Greenville County side, it is still county based. On the Spartanburg County side, it is hospital based.
Okay, thank you.
Captive customer. If you're a hospital, you run the ambulance service.
All right, thank you.
So this next slide, it basically just give you a general idea of the call volume from 2017 to 2021. You'll see that trend line there. And to kind of give you the bookend on either end, 2017 was 3,008 calls. 2021 was 4,318 calls. Response times, one thing I want to make sure that you understand on this, it looks like there's a huge dip there. It's actually not that huge. If you'll look at the numbers over to the left-hand side, that's timed in minutes, in parts of minutes. So that trend is obviously going down. If you remember, several years ago, we did the citizen satisfaction survey where we asked about what is considered reasonable for our citizens within our response times. That's on top of your turnout times. This is well within that, so we're doing good there. Department training, again, this one looks like it's going down, and that might sound or seem like a bad thing, but if you'll take into account 2017, we started embarking on a plan to continue to bring our staff up to a higher level. So that included a lot of one-time certification training, those kind of things, so that you're going to have those inflation points, and then you're going to have the dips when we don't have those, so on the off years. So that's what a lot of that is. One other thing is obviously in 2020 with everything going on with the COVID and unknown about that, we did back off on some of that training as well. So there's a little bit of dip that's related to that there. This fire prevention slide, there's a lot of information on this one slide, but it generally just gives you an idea that everything dealing with fire prevention and code enforcement, plan review, all that is trending up. And then at the end of this, I put the slide here for questions, but generally, I know the big question that you have is, what are you going to ask for in the budget process? And just generally speaking, we're going to continue evaluating the QRV program and its effectiveness, and then apparatus is going to be a priority. And that's in addition to the information that we've already shared, briefly in previous executive session. There's still a lot up in the air about that and how that's going to play out and everything, but that's generally what we have for you tonight.
Council, questions? What kind of vehicle rolls on the QRV call?
It's a SUV, it's a Ford Expedition.
Is that usually sufficient?
It is usually. The thing about that is that the one truck, and this is only 1 month, so I hesitate to say it's going to be indicative of the whole year, but it did significantly decrease the number of runs that the big trucks go on. But there are calls where we have more than one truck go on that. So in that rescue category, rescue EMS category, in addition to medical calls, you're talking about accidents like wrecks, things like that. There's other things that fall in that category besides that. So you'll have instances where we'll have more than one truck go. In those situations, you still may have a big truck go. So that's kind of how that works.
I guess Greer specifically, but do firemen in general get training on traffic, how to handle traffic at an accident?
Yes, sir.
Do they tell them to block all lanes of traffic and ignore it or something like that?
Only the volunteer departments.
If you ask our police department, they would say yes. So yes, we do get some training on that, and it really depends on what's going on and what we're doing, and that's why a lot of times you'll see the big trucks, they'll block lanes of traffic, and you've seen it. People riding up down the road, they have no clue as to what's right beside them, much less what's in front of them, and they won't pay attention. Then they're rubbernecking, looking to see what's going on. Yeah. So we have to create that safe zone, and unfortunately, that means putting the biggest thing you've got out there to block it, to keep people from running over you.
Let me make one suggestion.
Yes, sir.
And that may be already in what they tell you. If you're going to have to block a scene, send somebody up to the first turn and say, "Don't come this way, go this way."
We do try to do that. I'm not going to say we're always 100% at that. We do try to do that. We have resources available and personnel. We also try to rely on our PD to help with that as well. Sometimes we just don't have the resources to make that happen.
The places I go on a daily basis, they're just notorious for blocking the scene, and you got to go back about 1.5 miles
to get
out.
Right.
There's no reason for that.
No, I don't disagree with you.
Are you still satisfied with the central dispatch operation? Is that working well to your satisfaction?
With what we're doing right now, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because having the majority of the departments that in some form or fashion deliver service to the city, most of them, not all of them, but most of them being dispatched centrally, it gives us a lot of benefit from resources, but also being able to track data and response information that we've never had before. For instance, some of the contracts, we have no reporting requirements there. So some departments that we don't dispatch for, we literally could have a house fire in the city and not know about it. So, and that's just because they're not dispatched through our dispatch. Now that everybody's on the same CAD system, we can still pull that information, but we have to jump through a little bit more hoops to do it.
I like the QRV. I think it's good. Anything you do to prevent rolling a big truck, prevent the wear and tear.
Chief, I was fortunate to be on council when we hired you, and I know the things that we task you with, and you've gone through and it probably was intentional, and that's fine. You hit the marks that we asked you to just on this presentation tonight. I've got one request, and it's truly it may sound funny or to some or morbid to others, but if you recall, one of our planning retreats, you had an architect, and he had a station design, and I questioned him about it, and always that decontamination thing that's up, and he threw out a statistic, or he just said, firefighting's the most dangerous job there is. So, and some alluded to the fact how firemen die, that kind of thing. So I went back and did a little bit of research. That wasn't, what I found was not true. I want a definitive answer as to where firefighter deaths, the firefighter, are they making it all the way to retirement, or they're dying at 50? And the reason why is if it's a truism that our firemen are dying because of the environments they're going into at an early age, 50, 55, then my opinion is we stop going in fires. We just burn it down, because there's no need to have firemen going in there, knocking 30 years off their life.
Yep.
But if you and that's important when it comes to budgeting. So,
and I appreciate you bringing that up. And I do remember that conversation. And I wanted, if I have just a minute to share, so I personally have two examples right now of people who I have worked with previously at a previous department that are actually younger than me, and both of them have cancer now. One of the benefits to the Executive Fire Officer Program, in which we're fortunate that we have myself and also Chief Holzheimer here that have graduated from that program at the National Fire Academy. You get a lot of research out of that program, and one of those, very fortunate friend of mine that I actually went through with, asked some very out-of-the-box questions. One of those is there a way that we can take and reduce the carcinogens in the atmosphere either prior to or during the firefight, because everything else has been how do we decontaminate. And one of those things is, and actually we included it in this the fire engine that we've spec'd out, is the use of, and you'll be familiar with this, compressed air foam. So the foam itself, what he's been able to determine, he's actually doing some studies with UL right now for this, is that we've got those 4-gas monitors that we go in and test for everything, and we'll test and say, oh yeah, it's safe for you to take your breathing apparatus off and everything else. Well, that's not testing for everything. Okay, one example is benzene. So the readings that they were able to get through these scenarios and the testing, they were able to determine that, yeah, the 4-gas monitor says everything's safe, but they were able to see that the benzene, once the fire went out, actually benzene levels continued to rise to they were well exceeding what is considered immediately hazardous. Contrast that with actually using compressed air foam, where they go in and they actually use that on the initial firefight, because that actually sticks to everything. It actually encapsulates those carcinogens, so it's no longer being gassed off. And by doing that, the benzene as well as other contaminants dropped off the chart. So we've actually already started incorporating some of those things in our request to you, and through the supportive process. And that fire engine and anything that we buy going forward, we will incorporate that into it, as well as other things. One of the things we do is the hood exchange program. We're doing everything like that we can. And to the architect's point, from decontamination areas, is you can keep from bringing that back into the living spaces.
Well, my whole point is that if it's and the statistics I found don't back that up.
Right.
Matter of fact, if you're a garbage man, you're much more likely to get killed on the job.
Mm-hmm.
But if there is a study that shows firefighters are dying at a very early age nationwide, then burn it down.
I think that I think that what you're going to see in the studies, at least the ones I'm familiar with and seeing, is that there's higher instances of certain types of cancers. Now, whether or not that leads to a shortened lifespan, or I haven't seen anything that actually supports that.
See what you can find.
I will.
I just got one question.
Yes, sir.
Just on the numbers, do you anticipate a large savings with the QRV or just a small minimum amount savings?
I think where we're going to save there is that and there's a lot of factors to that question. I think where we're going to see that savings is in the size of the fleet that we have to carry with the big trucks, and then how much it costs us to continue to maintain those trucks, in addition to just regular maintenance, but also repair from wear and tear. All of our trucks, except for the ladder truck and one of the engines, are all either at or nearing 20 years old. So we could benefit some from replacing them sooner, but having a smaller fleet. If we replace them sooner, we can have a smaller fleet. If we don't, then we have to maintain a larger fleet because we had to have those reserves. So it's kind of one of those things you really have to kind of keep your finger on it and keep watching the numbers, that kind of stuff. But I do believe that ultimately it will help with that, and I believe that it will continue to allow us to reduce our response times to those types of calls, and to provide better service to our citizens, because now we have the ability to do a lot more of the ALS interventions. We give a lot of medications and stuff that previously was only done on ambulances. We can do that in the field now, and we can maintain those people a lot longer, buy them some time.
The short answer to that is he's not going to request any less money in his budget than he has been. So
That's right.
It really doesn't.
You won't see the savings, but maybe his budget won't blow quite as fast.
Anything else, counsel?
How many positions are you short?
We are actually fully staffed right now. The only moving target on that is the part-time paramedic EMTs. We're just finally getting through the last interviews for that, but we're fully staffed, and we've got that covered through.
Let me interject real quick. Yes, sir, we are fully staffed, and he is continuing to fill those QRV roles. But I think it's important to note that fully staffed is based on a limit for where we can staff people. And so we have two places where they can be staffed. So there's a certain limiting factor to the staff that we have based on our stations.
But we don't have a labor shortage.
We do not have a labor shortage, no, sir. We don't.
Push of a button, we can make everybody come to town.
But I think the QRV program's success is indicative of that dynamic and changing fire service, and the fact that we are responding with that specialized group is just demonstrates to me that the capacity for staff is there to continue to respond to those calls.
Anything else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Sir.
Ms. Presley, municipal court presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm just going to run through a quick snapshot of the court for you. Of course, everything that we have done for the last 2 years has been about COVID, starting from March 2020 when all of court was suspended and doors were closed. From that point, we have gotten multiple orders from the Supreme Court. Most recently, in January, that extends our operational restrictions and procedures until May the 5th. That has a direct impact on how we operate in court and how many cases we can hear at a specific time. Some achievements we've had this past year. service on city committees, online payment processing, which is something that we had to start with COVID. It was actually a good push because we needed a way for people to be able to pay without interaction. So we have that completely up and running, and that saves a great deal of interaction and time for the staff. We are current on our traffic court caseload, and we're current on bench warrants and expungement orders, which has been a task. We have, in the past year, I've assisted in training for the police department. The court, along with the city prosecutors, have done some training sessions on how court operates and how to act in court, how to testify in court, those kind of things, which seem to have been pretty helpful. I'm also the vice president for the Municipal Court Administration Association and their Clerk 101 instructor, which I'll actually be in Columbia next week instructing 25 other clerks of court. We've issued 133 search warrants, down 30%. The decrease, however, was due to a change in jurisdiction for search warrants for social media sites. Those used to come out of our court. There's a whole lot of requests for those, and now those are a circuit court level. So it's not that those warrants are not needed. They're just coming from a different agency now.
Well, hang on. What is that with social media sites?
We used to sign all the search warrants if they needed to look into somebody's Facebook or Snapchat, TikTok, whatever. It was determined that local agencies could not issue those any longer because the base companies were outside of our limits. So now it has to be a circuit court judge, and then they have to send them to California or wherever to get those records. It takes them a little longer, much more inconvenient for the detectives and officers because they don't have access to circuit court. But we were told we can no longer do that. So circuit court has taken that duty, and it has probably slowed their process a bit. We have someone there pretty much 24 hours a day that could sign that. Now they have to get to Greenville or Spartanburg between 8 and 5 to get those signed.
So they're using the post as just evidence, or is it just part of the case?
Yeah, the back workings of it essentially to get in to get different numbers and find out who did what. As far as, they use screenshots of lots of things, but that doesn't hold up to a case in court. You've got to identify a whole lot of things behind that. So those search warrants we no longer have jurisdiction over. And they're in a lot of cases now, obviously. So we issued 1,014 arrest warrants. We conducted 1,189 arraignments or bond hearings. That's the same number of defendants, 1,189. Those defendants had a total of 2,036 charges. All of those were down slightly. I will go ahead and say my numbers will look a little different from the police department's numbers. I base mine off of fiscal year with all the numbers that I have, just so it corresponds with all of the revenue and cash that we bring in. Our preliminary hearings, we had 179 defendants that were scheduled for hearings. They had a total of 298 charges. There was some downtime with COVID as well where we could not have these hearings, so that accounts for the decline in the number. Certainly not less requests or charges coming, it's just we were not allowed to have those for a little while. 4,738 cases were filed by the police department. This is warrants that are served or tickets that are given to people, down very slightly, and the clerks in my department were able to process and dispose of 4,929 cases. Bench warrant activity went through the roof. 225% increase. We issued 273 bench warrants, and 149 bench warrants were served or disposed of. We really like to see those numbers at least even. When they're not, and they're in this order, it just means that those warrants are stacking up and waiting to be served, which requires manpower, which the police department doesn't always have that in order to be able to just go out and serve warrants.
Not specifically, what generally is a bench warrant?
It's a failure to appear for court or a failure to comply with a court order. They didn't pay, they didn't get a counseling, they didn't comply with their house arrest, they didn't show up for weekend time, all of those things. And we've even added an additional step for those that don't come in for their court date. We actually send them a letter and give them so many days to come in before we issue that warrant. When they don't come in, then we issue it, and until they're found, it will sit there. Or we do allow them to come in if it's just a payment. If they didn't come to court and they were fined $500 or 30 days, if they'll come in and pay, we'll recall the warrants. We send out letters all the time giving them the opportunity to have the warrants recalled if they want to pay it. We also allow them the option to have somebody else come in and pay it so they don't feel like they're going to come in and get arrested. We let them send somebody else in to pay it for them. And we tell them that in the letters we send them.
Go back to the slide before.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Now, you said these are the cases filed and
Yes.
so why? And this is all coming from the police department?
Well, it's the numbers that we have from what we take every ticket that they enter is brought over. It's a way to interface it into our system, and warrant requests that they have. Warrant requests specifically that are issued and served upon that defendant. Oftentimes, the warrants that they get aren't served right then. Sometimes it can take a while for them to find that person. It can take years sometimes to find the person that they've gotten a warrant for. But these are specifically the ones that were issued and the defendant was taken into custody. And then tickets, which can be traffic or criminal.
Is there a reason? Are we just not able to process the volume? That's why they're not sending you more cases, or what happened there?
Well, COVID for sure, and just manpower dictates how often they can be out there. If they have time, the police have time to work proactively versus reactively. So it's directly affected by the number of officers who are on the road and how many tickets each of those writes. So anytime that they're down in numbers, as far as number of officers, they're going to have a dip in it just because they're being completely reactive and can't be proactive at that point.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Jury trials looks really scary the way it went down, but what happened was we were only able to have one jury term. Over the past year, we normally have 5 or 6, but because of COVID restrictions and regulations, we only had 1. So that's right on track for one. We schedule about 65 cases for one term of court, and that's pretty average to have about 50 disposed of, and a few of those continued on to the next term for various reasons that it had to be continued. Right now we have 312 pending jury trials. And we use the Cannon Center so that we can bring everybody in and it be safe with our COVID restrictions, but it has put us behind as far as moving through these as fast as we would have. So that's the goal for the next year coming. Hopefully after May 5th, we'll be out from under those restrictions and can move a little faster forward with those. Expungements were down 53%. We completed 210. This all has to do with the level of it's when it's scheduled, how many days after it has to be. You have to wait 31 days before it can be signed. There's all these time requirements with expungements. So it looks really low there, but I've got about 150 sitting on my desk that I just finished. So the number will probably go back up next year. It's all related on time and the number of cases. As our cases go down, the number of expungements will go down and vice versa. There's also 3 pieces of legislation we're watching that, if they pass, will increase the types of cases we have to expunge, which will increase those numbers again. Total money collected was $541,341.99. It was only $2,800 different from last year. That's the closest I've ever had in 2 years as far as the money we've brought in. It was only a 0.5% decrease. Out of that money, the revenue that stayed in the city was $194,808.21, which was actually an increase from the prior year by 5%.
Is that just based on the type of cases that they were?
It is. It also has to do with how much bond money is taken in. So the bond money can make a difference depending on what kind of cases we had and how high the bonds were set, what we have to hold in reserve for those. Yep. Our challenges, of course, COVID-related, all of our procedures that have been dictated by the Supreme Court and South Carolina Court Administration, keeping our caseloads current due to that. The legislation that we're tracking right now that may impact us are 3 expungement bills. One bill that is about the right to counsel. It's rights that have to be given at a bond hearing we already do that, even though it's not in the law. It's just good practice. So that one would not change much. One would require us protecting juror information, and the other would require 24-hour reporting to SLED for any orders that would affect purchasing a firearm. Our priorities are jury trials, training, which has been very difficult. Everything's been online, which is just not as good. It's not interactive, so we're looking for in-person training coming up. Remaining current on our cases for traffic court and DV court. And our next project is to research and prepare a plan to digitize our records. We are filling our records rooms up. Even though we are current with our record retention schedule, there are certain things that can never be purged, that have to be kept forever, unless they're digital. So there's a way to make more room without having more room. So our future needs are a digital scanning system, a full-time ministerial recorder, also known as an administrative judge, a full-time cashier, and move our jury trial coordinator from part-time to full-time. These are future needs. I'm not asking for any of these in this coming budget year, but in the years to come, this is where we're heading, and the personnel numbers really depend completely on the increase in personnel and numbers from the police department. So their personnel will affect what I'll need in the future. And that's it. I'll take any questions.
Council, questions, comments?
How's your staffing? It's okay right now?
I have one part-time position open. We're good.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Why don't we make a change here before we get to the police department? Jim, in regards to disaster storage, when we start talking about keeping records permanently and that sort of thing, just a quick, brief overview, if you would, of how we do that and who we work with on that sort of thing.
Yeah, we're currently working with a company called Net3 Technology, where we basically have two systems in place. One we're putting in place as quickly as we can here. Net3 Technology, we have our most critical storage and servers stored off-site in their location in Las Vegas. I wanted something definitely away from any environmental issues we may face, and hopefully that's far enough away. The other option that we're doing as well is we're creating a second set of storage appliances here on site, but offline. And by that I mean we'll do the backups. Once they're done, we literally unplug them from the network, so if, heaven forbid, we get hit with something, they are completely unaffected. Now, the only problem with that is that it may be a week old. We may lose a week's worth of data if it's a truly catastrophic event that we have. But we do have that information, again, stored to the point that with Net3, we can have data restored in as little, or lose as much data as about 2 minutes. So we're constantly making updates and changes regularly. We can go back as far back as we need to go. So if we find an infection happened a month ago, we can go back 1 month and 1 day and recover that information from there. So those are the systems that we're putting in place now, and we'll be looking at additional storage space for other and more growth as we grow with both the codes department and any other needs across the city as well.
Well, that was my second question. From a financial standpoint, particularly from a budgeting standpoint, that obviously becomes an ongoing issue, does it not?
It does. Of course, with the Net3, the more we store, of course, the more it costs.
Sure.
And that's a regular monthly cost that we pay for that service. We're also using them for recovery. So in the event that we have something that takes down all of our servers, we'll spin them up in the cloud and then run from the cloud until we can get our on-site facilities back up and running.
Thank you.
We could probably put in your budget, council probably needs to check and verify that system out the off-site system. we probably should go out there and inspect that place.
It's actually a secret location.
I'll be more than happy to take you out there and show you where it is.
All righty, police department. I believe the chief's going to lead us in this conversation. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. And I do realize I am probably the person standing between you and the exit door tonight. You've been here since 5:30, so I'll be as expeditious as I can, I promise. Before I begin talking about 2021, I just want to express my appreciation to you as a council for your support for our police department, for our entire staff. Every one of you at some point in time, multiple occasions, have personally said to me your expression of support for our staff and our officers and what they do out there, and I promise you I do share those with them, and it means a lot. So before I forget to tell you that, that's the first thing on my mind that I wanted to communicate tonight, so thank you for that. I want to go over our community outreach efforts that we worked on during 2021. First of all, our National Night Out, which is an annual community building event that promotes police and community partnerships and promotes a spirit for ensuring safe neighborhoods. We conducted National Night Out in August at 4 different locations in our city, and we had varying success at the different locations depending on what part of the city that was held. We did our drug take-back program. It is a safe and convenient and responsible way to dispose of unused or expired prescription drugs. The Greer PD Citizens Police Academy alumni assisted us with 2 separate dates where we we're standing by for people to drive up and drop off all of their prescription drugs that they no longer need to keep in their house. And we also maintain still to this day a drop-off point in our lobby in the police department 24 hours a day. Our Cops for Tots program continued again for the 31st year, and we served approximately 250 children this year. Again, our goal is to make sure that no child in the city of Greer goes through Christmas without gifts to open, and it gives us an opportunity to have some positive interaction, positive exposure with the kids in our community. We did have another record-breaking year. In fundraising this year, we raised well over $30,000, and we had a really good time with that this year. Our Fist Bump Friday program continued in 21. We participated at Woodland Elementary, Crestview, Chandler Creek, and Abner Creek Academy. And we're working on scheduling another one in about a month as well. Our Greer Police Citizens Academy continued in 2021. We had 11 people who successfully graduated. We started our next class for 2022. We started that last week, and we have 12 members of our community who are participating this year. We did our Stuff a Cruiser program, and that's something we started the year before last. And so again, we're partnering with various people in our community, but also our Citizens Academy alumni group. We collected monetary donations and school supply donations at Walmart, and then we, 2 weeks later, we distributed those it was a drive-by distribution setup that we did, and we did that on Oak Street in the Sunnyside community. And we had some left over, and we delivered those to 2 different elementary schools. we did not stuff a cruiser. We stuffed about 6 cruisers. It was incredible. We had an overwhelming response. A year would not be a year in police work until you have challenges. So I want to share with you one challenge that we are experiencing and have been for about 5 years. And that is retention of staff and recruiting of new staff. My personal opinion on why are we experiencing these recruiting challenges, and I've kind of come up with three reasons. The first one is across the nation, the increased awareness of the law enforcement profession and some of the rare but real side of what law enforcement officers must deal with, and the ever-presence of cameras, either our cameras or those cameras from the public. So as time has gone by, if you've been watching social media or the national media, those incidences that don't look really good to look at, and some of them have been bad decisions made by law enforcement, those things are repeatedly shown over and over again across America. So I do believe that since 2015, the incident in Ferguson, Missouri, there's been a continuous string of those incidents up until the George Floyd incident in 2020. And I do think the recruiting for new police officers has suffered because of those perceptions that are out there nationally. The second reason is I do think, just in general, people across America, maybe not around here as much, but some people have lost trust in government in general. So I think we've seen that all across various departments, not just in Greer, but all over, everywhere. We're dealing with a recruiting challenge. And thirdly, I think all industries right now are dealing with employment and recruiting challenges. It's not just police, it's not just government, it's everywhere. So the results are we're dealing with smaller applicant pools, and we are dealing with competitive recruiting across the upstate. So, some of my budget requests will be in relation to staffing, compensation, benefits, that type of thing, so that we remain competitive. Would never ask that we always become the highest of this or that, but I do think we must remain competitive. I do want to update you on our drone program. We started that 3 years ago. Yes, sir.
Going back to the recruiting,
yes.
You and I had it was actually a conversation about one young man that we thought would be great for the city, and you guys, he was already on y'all's radar, y'all were looking at him. But I'm just wondering if, and I don't know what you guys do when you go out to recruit, but I'm wondering, and you may already do this, if we differentiate ourselves, because you guys have some special quality. I mean, they got to be 21, right?
Yes, for police, yes.
And so, when you're at a college, I saw you're at Bob Jones, you're at North Greenville. Do you think we should try to start recruiting somewhat like college athletics do? Okay, this kid, we may never have met this person, but we know by maybe his grades or his professors or whatever, we would just want to reach out to him. Besides just being that table and that banner in a hall with 10 others. I don't know. I just and the only reason I say that is that young man you and I spoke about, he was an athlete. He got recruited. He got recruited on the athletic side, and then he was being recruited by a career side as well. So I don't know. That's kind of been in the back of my mind. If maybe we should try to implement some of that.
Yes, sir. Well, the back of your mind and my mind are on the same page. We are bringing people into our building, and we're showing them around. We're introducing them to our staff. We're taking them out to lunch. I've even brought them to meet our administrator before. So we're showing them around, and we're showing them our greatest asset, which is our people. And we have other things which are very attractive, and our facilities are great, and our equipment that we use is very good. but the personalities of the people that we have working on our staff is the greatest thing we have, and that's what we show off. And we bring people in frequently who are showing interest. Sometimes they're just making inquiries. They're from another state or something, and we'll bring people in. And I can tell you, we have absolutely, without a doubt, had success because of those efforts that we're doing. We're treating people that are interested in this type of work, that we are kind of like a family. The environment we have here is positive. We have positive energy in our building over here, and people like what they do here, and you can tell that when you walk through the halls. That's what I'm hearing back from the people we're recruiting. They're like, okay, people here like being here. I've gone to this other police department somewhere else, and it's not like this. So that's what makes us stand out. And we have been successful. We've had people who were narrowing their decision down between Greer PD and then maybe one or two other locations, and they have picked us for those exact reasons. So some of that recruiting, the college recruiting, football, athletic, whatever, that's kind of the way I've described it to some of our people that we need to do, and we're just trying to build on that.
Good.
Thanks for asking that question.
Chief,
Yes.
you hear a little bit about recruiting from other areas of the country, even where the climate's a little bit different. Is there any traction, any merit, anything that way?
We have this past week an inquiry from California, certified officer. We get them from New York State. Haven't had any hiring results from that, but we're working on possibility from California. There's another one from Georgia. That's not really a different part of the country, but so we are getting some movement with that, and I do think that I'm hoping to hear more of that. We have one from Asheville, North Carolina, which is kind of from another country, but so we're working hard on one, and so hopefully we'll have some good results from that.
Chief,
Yes.
You're talking about the recruiting, and this is kind of what I do every day. We have try to create a sales funnel, and so we do marketing, and then we try to get people in our funnel, and then the more people that we have in there, and the higher the conversion rate, the more money that we make. And so, when you're talking about recruiting, like, do you feel like you have the resources that you need in order to bring in enough candidates, to screen enough candidates, to walk through enough candidates to get the people hired that you need?
We pitch in and make it a combined effort. I do think our police department needs a recruiting coordinator as a full-time position, hiring and recruiting coordinator. So I do see that as a need, because I think this is a new way of life for us. Is recruiting is at the top of our priority list, besides, of course, keeping our city safe. But that kind of fits in the equation, because our ability to be ready to answer issues regarding crime, staffing is one of those considerations. So I do think that a full-time recruiting coordinator is something that I see in the future, and I hope I can convince the same here.
Would you would pay a recruiter, though, if they brought in a candidate?
So you're speaking on an individual level, like if they hear I've got one, like a headhunter type situation?
Well, I mean, I think one way to do it so you don't have to have a person in-house. I mean, and this is just like if you go on any other industry. I mean, there are recruiters out there that are actively searching for like engineers or financial folks or whatever, and there could be one, that's specific to your field, and you say, okay, find me, X, Y, Z, and if they stay on for, I'll pay you if you bring in the candidates, and if they stay on for a certain length of time, I'm going to take you're going to get a portion of their salary. I mean, that's a way to,
Mr. Dumas, we've actually looked at that for a few positions, and it's not outside the realm of possibility to do it for them. And typically what we've seen is that it will be 10% of the starting salary of the person that they've recruited or something along those lines. So, yes, sir, that's something we can consider.
Just reach out to a former college football coach. Put him on as a recruiter.
Yes, sir.
I got one question, though.
Yes.
Do y'all only typically stay in the recruiting range of like college age? Do we branch out to high school, or is there no need per se?
I think unofficially we're recruiting at all ages. I think planting the seeds even at our Cops for Tots event. I mean, they're getting to know us, that we're hanging out talking to them, they're seeing us in a different light. The Fist Bump Fridays, I mean, all these things we do, it's sort of, the community outreach isn't, in an essence, recruiting. We may not be hitting them up for jobs and offering them, you know, a salary and all that yet, but, and we've had quite a few people over the years get into law enforcement because of the influence that a school resource officer has had in their life. And I can't count how many who have, for example, Perry Bowens at Greer High and Steve Anderson at Riverside. They've been there so long. They have, I mean, we're hiring people who, when they come to the interview, they're saying, I'm here because of Steve Anderson or Perry Bowens. They've been that much of an impact on my life and that much of an influence on me. So, yes, we're trying to hit people from all ages.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Playing the long game.
Yeah.
Yep. The drone program, got our data up there, but we've used the drones for in coordination with canine tracking. We used it recently with looking for a missing missing girl during the arrest of an attempted murder suspect, multiple public demonstrations. We also use it as an overwatch tool during large crowd events. Calls for service in 2021, we responded to 32,460 calls. That was a 4.15% increase. Our arrests were down by 9%. Collisions across the city, very significant increase, 19%. And our citations or traffic tickets increased in 21 by 28%. Very significant increase. Here's a snapshot of the 5-year trends for reported crime in the city. These are summarized by the FBI. In this particular chart, the last data point available was 2020. Today, I did receive some preliminary numbers, and I'll just share that with you for 2021. Crimes against persons was up by 10%. Compared to the previous year. Crimes against property was down 7%. Crimes against society was down 23%. And there's a group called Group B offenses, which are miscellaneous things, more minor crimes. That was up by 18%. This is more of a 20-year shot at just how crime has gone in the city of Greer over a long period of time. So this is your violent crime. As you can see, it kind of goes up and down, but we used to be sort of hovering around the hundreds. Now we're creeped up to like the mid-hundreds. 2020, we had a reduction in violent crime. Property crime, again, a 20-year snapshot. We've had an increase significantly since 2017. I want to share with you a brand new program that we started. I'm sorry.
Chief, in the last slide, what do you think? That's a pretty, I mean, that's almost a 30% increase. What would we attribute that to?
Most of these have been auto breakings, some of the large numbers, but also we've had a lot of construction theft. And those are hard to solve, and they're hard to prevent. That's just kind of the way it is.
20 years. What percentage did our population increase?
And that's exactly right. So our rate.
That probably is what, if you probably can go back and say 30% increase in those crimes. We had about what's our percentage population increase?
In 20 years, our city has doubled in size. We were around 18,000 in the year 2000. Yep. New program we started right at the end of 2021, funded by our city budget, a new position. It's called the Safe Neighborhoods Program, and this is to address violent gun crimes in the city of Greer, focusing on enforcement of gun crime violations, and also incentivizing gang reduction and prevention of gun violence. Over time, this program will move on to addressing prolific offenders and career violent offenders, working to discourage those offenders from continuing their life of crime. that's asking a lot out of one person, but Jenna Bowden, she's been promoted to corporal and is doing a fabulous job. She's already been working on a couple of gun-related incidents over the last couple of weeks, doing a fabulous job, and has made has acquired some arrest warrants.
As far as gangs, I haven't noticed as many surfaces being tagged. Do we have a handle on gangs, or do we seen a decrease, or are they just quit spray painting?
Oh, we absolutely have gangs, and we've always had gangs as long as I've been around here. I don't think tagging is as much of an activity that they do. I think we still have graffiti issues. I don't think all the graffiti is necessarily gang related, though. But we do have gang issues. The gang dynamic has changed a bit. So now members, they change gangs, and that used to be an absolute no-no. If you were a member of a certain gang, it was almost impossible to get out of it without some sort of violence. But so we do have gang issues here, but I think just about every community has a very similar level of problems.
Are the gangs the typical ones that we know of?
They are.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, they are. They usually stay affiliated with gangs from other areas, like some of the larger cities, and they basically are given authority or almost franchise rights to extend that gang affiliation to the local cells. So that does happen here, absolutely. As our city population continues to grow, I just wanted to kind of summarize here on this slide as we're looking at the population increases over the last several years. But I'm very fortunate that we are surrounded by some wonderful people that work at our police department. Even though our recruiting challenges are daily issues, but we're still hiring the highest quality people. We're not sacrificing quality because of a desire to have quantity. But over the last several months, I've taken a very strong notice to looking, or just kind of doing some checks with body camera videos that are available for me to look at, and I'm constantly running across incidences where officers could have used force and would have been absolutely justified based on training and the law. And they are finding other ways to work around this. They are de-escalating the situation. They're staying extremely calm. And some of these officers have just handled these things masterfully. And it just blows my mind how they stay so calm, so cool. And I kind of wonder, is their blood pressure even increasing, or heart rate, or anything? And not only our officers, but our telecommunicators, just over the last 2 months, I've noticed some really, really good incidences that were handled absolutely perfectly, where they had people in danger, they were in a domestic violence situation, live, in progress, and our telecommunicators are staying on the line with them. They're getting updated information, kind of coaching them through how to stay safe until the officers get there, and I'm just blown away. And it's hard for me to see those things and not have this opportunity like I have tonight to share some of that with you. So I'm just proud to report to you that we have some really good people doing great jobs, and they're being trained well, and they work in a great community. And I just want to thank you. Appreciate all the support, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Council, floor's open for questions, comments, discussion.
Chief, can you talk about the case? She talked in Kirsten's report. She showed that data about the cases filed and the lack of revenue that came in because of that or whatever. It was almost like the numbers kind of went hand in hand. I mean, what has shifted in order, so that we don't have the same volume, or what's changed?
Certainly. Everything you're seeing with the pattern of a decrease of enforcement, like especially with arrest across the nation, across even our state, and even local jurisdictions close to here, we're all seeing the exact same thing. Policing as an industry is in the middle of a massive change. And that is a result of the public expectations across America that are responding what their eyes are being open to. And our officers are working in a different environment. It's not a heavy enforcement environment like it used to be. Back when I was policing, it was almost like, how many people can we arrest for crimes this weekend? But now we're finding alternatives to arrest. We are not charging people for multiple crimes during one incident as much. And sometimes we're finding alternatives to just charging people. Voluntary compliance, we're issuing a lot more warnings now in traffic violation type things. Now, with all that being said, we had a significant increase in citations and warnings this past year. So we have made a push from the command staff level to let's get back out there and let's be police. Don't hesitate from enforcing the law when it needs to be done. And this year we've seen these numbers come back up. Now, arrest numbers were down by 9%. Ms. Presley's numbers, as she said, were from fiscal year, so they don't line up perfectly with my calendar year numbers that I'm presenting to you. So we're watching nationally across everywhere, all police, all sheriff's offices. They're rethinking how they're policing. And those are the topics that we get in all of our training with the associations we're members of, and that's what's out there. I don't know if that's answering your question, but.
Chief, there was a sidebar conversation here at the table earlier this evening, well before your presentation. Do we still have, or is it a matter of personnel or what? Do we still have a traffic division or that sort of thing? Do we?
We do. We have 4 officers that are assigned specifically to traffic duties. We do.
Okay. Yes. Others?
Chief, it seems like maybe over the last year or two, there's a little bit of maybe this is totally off base, my observation, and in conversation with others, more and more instances of just groups of, how do you say it, problems in the park and in downtown, right, during events and that kind of thing. Obviously, there's been a lot of investment and progress made in drawing that foot traffic. Can you speak at all to what conversations we've had about trying to curb some of that?
Sure. So a lot of these have been, in my observation, they've been sort of focused around groups of kids, and I think they range from 12 to 16, 18 years old. So we have a park, a beautiful park. We have a lot more people in downtown. We have a lot more people coming to downtown because of the investments and the word's out there. Parks are a magnet. I do ensure that we continually put time and effort into extra patrolling these areas, and we are very well aware that there's kind of a seasonal situation for this. Summer, we generally put our school resource officers, the Greenville County school resource officers, we will reassign them if they're not running one of our camps. They're out here, and that makes a huge impact. First of all, they're available to be reassigned out here, but also they know these kids. They know them. They know their families. They know where they come from, and so we've been able to be a pretty good reactive scenario. But sometimes another problem will pop up, and it takes us a little bit of time to get some traction on it. But the feedback we get is appreciated. Absolutely.
Well, I'd just like to thank you all for being here tonight. I talked to Mr. Merriman several weeks ago. I don't know if this was in response to that conversation. I don't know, but I appreciate you setting this up and bringing everybody in, and I love your brevity. I appreciate that, and then I appreciate you being open to answering our questions, because we do need to. I told him this. I feel like we need to stay in the loop with what y'all are doing and what's going on, because the community is constantly asking us what is going on, what's changing, and and it helps us to kind of be in the loop with what you're up to and what's trends and different things like that to look out for. And just big picture stuff's important to me.
Yeah, I appreciate the questions. I like the tough questions, and if you ever run into someone that I can personally sit down with, I'm absolutely available for that.
We thank you, sir. We appreciate
Thank you.
it. Council, that concludes our workshop.